Well, joining us now to talk about the India-US relationship and the fact that Prime Minister Modi may be headed there very soon, Ambassador Harsh Vardhan Shringla, India's former Foreign Secretary, G20 Sherpa, again somebody who knows the India-US relationship through and through. On the basis of the White House statement, do you believe that essentially what we are seeing is what we had all hoped for, a sense of continuity, but the fact that there has been mention of a, quote, fair bilateral trading relationship might be that one issue which adds a certain edge which needs to be resolved? That's my reading. Do you agree?
Absolutely. I think the conversation yesterday was very important because it really provides a reiteration of the desire of both sides to take that relationship forward. It renews the contact between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump in the early part of Trump 2.0. And it also provides some elements of continuity in the Trump administration's approach vis-a-vis India. And so in terms of resumption, I would say that, the fact that President Trump has invited Prime Minister Modi to visit the United States, to visit the White House. He has later also conveyed that this will probably take place in February, and that the two sides are trying to work out dates, is an indication that this visit would take place early. Secondly, he's also spoken about the Quad summit that India would host later in the year. So we've already had, looking at the possibility of two major bilateral visits, an exchange of visits on both sides, which is a great way to start the relationship. The second, of course, is the scope of that relationship as underlined by both the readouts, from the Indian side and the US side. I think the fact that the discussion was wide-ranging, went beyond bilateral matters to encompass regional and global issues of interest, from the Indo-Pacific to the conflicts in Europe and the Middle East, indicates that the two leaders have spent time in discussing what are really issues of burning interest globally. Trump also said he had a long conversation, which meant that the meeting was quite, a lengthy one. The conversation was quite lengthy, and I think a lot of it would have been a discussion on how the two sides view issues of mutual interests, both regionally and globally. And the third is the element of continuity, as I said. I mean, the fact that Trump spoke about, the Quad summit indicates his interest in continuing the Quad process. We have to remember that while Trump 1.0, saw the revival of the Quad, it was under Biden's presidency that the Quad summit was convened for the first time. And the fact that Trump referred to the Quad summit in India means that he emphasizes the continuity of the Quad process. The second, of course, is technology. He has spoken about technology, and I think this indicates that the initiative on critical and emerging technologies that started during President Biden's time would see continuity. So we are seeing a continuity in the relationship. There were, as you say, some issues, bilateral issues that were brought up. One of these, of course, is the desire of the US side to see more purchases of defense equipment from India. The other is what they call a fair bilateral trading relationship, which means essentially the issue of tariffs. And the third, of course, is one that relates to immigration. I think the emphasis on the US side for greater collaboration in dealing with their concerns with illegal immigration also figured in that conversation.
So that therein potentially lies another issue. Would we, for example, in India be okay about seeing illegal Indian illegal Indians who entered the United States illegally being shipped back to India with their hands cuffed and their legs bound? We've seen images of that with illegal sort of migrants from Colombia, to the United States being sent back. It didn't happen in that way finally, but it just seems rather difficult.
I think that's an extreme way of looking at it. Deportations have happened in the past. During Trump 1.0, I do recall that deportations were regular occurrence. It's only criminals that are brought under some level of custody because they represent a threat, to fellow passengers and to others. So that's a different issue. But I think those who are simply being deported are put on commercial flights or special flights and brought back. I don't think there's any question of their coming back in chains or in any way fettered in that context. But I think what is important is that anyone who's deported back to India would have gone through a verification process that our authorities would have checked very carefully his antecedents to confirm that he or she is an Indian citizen before that deportation takes place. I think it's a very controlled process under which a certain number of individuals are brought back. As I said, it is not a new process. It has happened in the past. And possibly, I think, you've seen comments about this even from External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar, who's pointed out that, India does not support illegal immigration.
Exactly.
And that, while we are happy to cooperate when it comes back to, dealing with illegal immigrants, we also want to see scope for talent from India have the right opportunities in the US and other countries. In other words, there should be a streamlining of the legal immigration system that would enable more Indian talent to find opportunities in the United States through processes like the H-1B visa, better access to green cards and so on and so forth. So this is a dialogue that I'm sure is under process. It's not an open dialogue. It's something that you have to do in the quieter confines of diplomacy.
Ambassador, I think you've raised a very important point. It isn't in India's interest to see Indian nationals illegally try and get into any country, let alone the United States. The routes being taken by Indians looking to get into the United States put them in extreme physical danger as they went through Central America in certain areas, in certain cases, looking to enter the United States illegally. There was a danger to their lives and a large number of people every single year. Do you therefore believe that with Trump taking this one stand that, look, illegal entrance into the United States, irrespective of the country, will not be allowed, it will detract efforts to try and enter the United States illegally, thereby protecting the lives of people and saying that, look, you cannot just illegally migrate. That just doesn't work. It's been a problem for years.
Well, when I was in the United States, one of the issues that I had to deal with early in my term was the arrest of a very large number of Indian students who apparently were, there on illegal considerations. Now, this is not always correct, and we contested that. But the fact is that many students were duped by agents and others. Right. So not only the physical dangers of illegal migration, people spend a lot of money in trying to get across to these countries, but they also put themselves and their families in harm's way. And secondly, of course, the possibility of unscrupulous agents and others, I would say, exploiting such human trafficking instances is something also that is not desirable from our point of view. Thirdly, it is a matter of principle also, because as a state, we don't encourage illegal, immigration into India. We're very conscious of the fact that people manage to get in despite the fact that we have border controls and that we are always vigilant against illegal migration. There's no reason why we should support illegal immigration out of India either. But at the same time, I think we are cognizant about the safety, security, and the well-being and interests of our own citizens. And that, I think, is a very, very important consideration when it comes to working with the US authorities on illegal migration in a very calibrated and considered manner, I may say.
One final point, again to quote from the White House statement, the President emphasized the importance of India increasing its procurement of American-made security equipment. That's important, and a lot of American-made security equipment has worked for us, but India has been absolutely diligent in importing weaponry in the cases where we choose to import, and that is increasingly coming down from wherever we want to import weapons. So, for example, we've got French weaponry, German weaponry, or systems, we've got British weaponry, and certainly Russian weaponry. And in a sense, the word non-aligned is no longer used anymore, but we are entirely independent in where we procure our weapons from, right? Is that potentially problematic for the United States and Trump that Russia continues to be our major defense partner?
Look, we've always made it clear to our American friends that we will procure equipment from the best possible source in a manner that suits our interests best. So there are a number of items that are procured from Russia that are desirable from our point of view, whether it is economically desirable or it is desirable from the point of view of effectiveness. It suits us. As you mentioned, we procure equipment from the EU, for example, EU countries. This is also something that may be the best fit for our requirements. But lately, we procured a lot of quality equipment from the United States, whether it is, if you saw the Republic Day parade, you would have seen the Apache helicopters, you would have seen the C-130s, the C-17. We didn't see the Chinook, but you also saw the P-8I maritime reconnaissance aircraft. So there is an entire range of equipment that we procured from the United States, just from the Air Force's point of view. I'm not talking about the the Reaper drones. We're not talking about the Army howitzers and so on and so forth. But our equipment procurement from the US has increased steadily in the last decade or so, and that's one of the reasons for that is the series of agreements that we've signed with the US. From the foundational agreements like Baker, etc., down to the latest agreement, which is basically enables us to procure technology and equipment that is of a classified nature. So as you become closer partners in that, and there's greater interoperability of equipment, you'll find it more comfortable to buy equipment from the United States. We are now talking about joint manufacturing, joint production of equipment under our own Atmanirbhar policy in defense. I think our companies are investing more into defense production, and therein lies a great opportunity for US defense manufacturers to base their platforms out of India. And I believe that will not only give them a market in India, but also markets in countries that are more, I would say, that makes it easier for India to export to them rather than directly from the United States.
And yet, Ambassador, that also, in a sense, the US partnership and strategic agreement and the foundational agreements restrict, in a sense, what we can procure from America. For example, America has made it clear that there are certain systems, not least of all F-35 stealth fighters, which will not be offered on the table because we've acquired certain Russian systems, the S-400 surface-to-air missile systems, which they say that, look, if you operate that, then you can't get this. So in a sense, it's a balancing act, isn't it? And it's not just stealth fighters from America. There are many other systems which America deems too sensitive to sell to us should we continue with high-end Russian equipment. So it's a bit of a balancing act for us, isn't it?
Well, of course, I look at it this way, that more and more cutting-edge US equipment, defense equipment is becoming available to us. I'll put it the other way around. Okay. And increasingly, I think, products like the GE-144 engine, the light combat aircraft engine, is being made available to India, even on terms that we are, manufacturing terms. Sure. And so that aspect is there. What I think where there is a contradiction is where there could be a conflict of interest with Russian weaponry or other weaponry. And that's something that we have to work out with our partners to see what works best. Well, the S-400 is in our best interest. But if there is a conflict of interest with the F-35, then we would go in for some other fighter. They, after all, offering us the F-16 and the F-18. There are other options in among European manufacturers that are there also. So that's a matter of choice and a matter of how we work it out with the US. But I think in general, you can say that defense relationship is moving forward.
It is.
In the right direction. It's giving us greater options. And I think the availability of qualitative defense equipment, which are not there on the table before, say 20 years before, is a great change. And under Trump 2.0, I think that defense and security relationship should and could take a paradigm leap forward in many ways.
I can't leave you without asking you a final question. You've seen Prime Minister Modi interact with President Trump in the past. Does foreign policy, either American or Indian, really move forward through the personal chemistry of leaders?
Undoubtedly. I think the India-US relationship is very dependent on the momentum that is gained by a personal rapport between the top leadership. In America, you have an executive presidency. President Bush Jr. used to say that, I'd like to look you in the eye and then I decide whether this is going to happen or not happen. So it's that personal contact between the Indian leadership and the US leadership is important. That is what makes the difference. The fact that Prime Minister Modi has enjoyed an excellent relationship with President Obama, President Biden, and President Trump is also a very important reason why the relationship has done so well in the last decade or so. And there's no doubt that under Trump 2.0, it's an empowered presidency in many senses. I think the scope for the two leaders to take that relationship, to use their personal chemistry and very good connect, to take that relationship exponentially forward exists.
All right, Ambassador Shringla, wonderful speaking to you. Thank you very much, sir, for being with us.
Thank you,
Thanks
Vishnu.
very much indeed.